Hey, Benji.
Hey Rob, how's it going?
Good.
Are we expecting Yakov today?
Yes. Let me message him. He put some stuff on the agenda.
Oh, lovely. I need to add myself to that.
Hey, Yakov. Are you here?
Hey, hi.
Do you want to go through the things you added on the agenda?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing was a question that I had for Benji, in terms of his algorithm. I'm not 100% sure if he's able to walk us through the graph portion of it, where we, sort of collect all the things that have the right. I mean, I'm not sure if he needs to walk us through the entire portion of the algorithm, but I was just hoping that he could make sure that it addresses the edge case that I have linked in the discussion, where a field is listed both in a parent defer and um, sorry, in two sibling defers, but also in a child defer where it'll never be sent in that child defer, but it's slightly different than its maybe sibling fields. I think the linked example probably is better than me trying to explain it.
I'm just trying to look at that now, Yakov.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up also now to refresh myself.
See, are you referring to the last name field in your test case?
Yeah, that's right.
So that would that wouldn't need to go through that path anyway, because the last name field would be collected without any need for any defer. So without need for another level of defer.
Um, But how? But could you just? Would you be able to like walk us through like how? Meaning it's collected at it. There is definitely right, exactly. There's no need for another level of defer. But where is that? Where like which portion of your algorithm um, takes care of that?
Sure, that would presumably be collect field. So let me just have a quick read through my own spec edits, and then I'll report back to you.
And it's also not an emergency. I was just curious to better understand, the edits. Like, um, it's no rush.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because my algorithm or my spec edits have the need to for each defer to track its parent defer to do this kind of filtering, to make sure that we don't we can handle this edge case among other reasons, I think. So I'm just trying to figure out if I can in terms of the idea maybe of merging uh, uh, sort of the graph changes, or meaning the change, using as much as possible from the, sort of the elegant design that you have. I just want to make sure that I understand it better, and maybe can maybe one low hanging fruit is to get rid of that parent tracking.
Got it. Yeah. It's going to take me a while to get my head back around this again because it's been a while since I've looked at it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to raise your attention to that comment, and it's like I said, it's no emergency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
so
want us to give you another minute, or if you want to take a look later, and we can move on to
Yeah,
the next thing, up to you.
let's crack on because I'm apparently not in the right headspace to think about this right now.
yeah, that's
Definitely
awesome.
takes
So
effort to get into the
yeah,
headspace.
exactly. Whenever you get a chance, and if not, I'll just nudge you about it. Offline or even at the next meeting.
Yeah, do feel free to nudge me because I got a lot going on at the moment.
All right. Do you want to talk about the GraphQL JS status?
Yeah. So not to, again, not to prejudge like the final, what form the final specification changes will be made. But I've been working on. I think we're fairly certain that what's in main right now in GraphQL JS is not going to be the final, you know, version of the specification changes. And so I've, taken the liberty of rewriting it, what we have, which is now like um, the first version of we had one version of incremental delivery with duplication, and now we have a version up there that deduplicates. Um, and I have taken the liberty of rewriting that according to the version of the spec edits that I have, linked over there. And basically, the advantage is that we no longer have to do filtering. The filtering happens via regular null bubbling, similar Benji to your solution. So the goal would be to get that into GraphQL.js as a starting point to, I think, hopefully landing on a common set of specification, changes and to make the implementation match better the spec. Because I think the way things are going, we're sort of zeroing in on the idea that we don't want specification to have filtering, we don't want the implementation to have filtering. All the current solutions we have don't have that, and instead have things being left out, just flowing naturally from the algorithm. So what I have right now is that I used to have it as one PR, and now it's a stack of PRs. Basically, without filtering, we have a performance drop because we have to record separately all the I'm calling them right now incremental data records that we're planning on sending later, or maybe even executing later, but definitely sending later. We have to create a more elaborate data structure, and then fold that data structure up, combine it with others, like but we have a list of them. We have to fold it up. So we do have a performance drop, but there's several performance improvements that I have in the PR stack that ameliorate that. And then we could, and so that's basically how things stand now. In terms of that, there's a PR stack waiting on GraphQL.js to get things to match the my version of the specification edits, and then hopefully that'll be a starting point to pushing forward.
Yeah, I don't really even like to think of it as like filtering versus not filtering, because I think it's just like a different form of filtering, but it's the approach that I think both that your spec and Benji spec takes as well, is where you're returning a tuple of the results and the new incremental things that we need to worry about as you go up the algorithm. And so that's what we're adding into GraphQL.js now, instead of like a request kind of context that we mutate as you go throughout the algorithm. So yeah, I'm gonna be looking at those PRs, and you said that Sahaj is gonna help with that as well. And I think that it's getting us closer to the implementation matching what we want to propose as a spec.
When we talk about this as well, I think it might be beneficial to not talk in terms of deduplication, because deduplication effectively says you've done duplication and then you get rid of it.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're actually avoiding duplication in the first place. So I would call it without duplication rather than deduplication, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think it's not to spend too much time on it, but I think it is important to get on the same page with a common set of terms. So that's a helpful comment for me. Thank you.
Yeah, is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk over? I think this was mostly just like a status of where we're at and what we're working on. And I think hopefully we should get those changes in GraphQL.js soon, and we'll keep iterating on both the spec and the implementation.
One question I had for you, Rob, actually, I think is I think there's definitely well, at the end of this PR stack, we'll still have early execution on by default in GraphQL.js, but it should be easy to switch that to the other way, to have a flag that enables early execution. I think that might be advisable, based on previous discussions that we've all had. So, do you think that it might pay to discuss how we might want that flag, whether that's true, whether everyone agrees that that's true, and how we might want that to work?
I haven't thought about it much at all. maybe we can. Did you have something in mind?
Well, actually, not particularly. I just from prior discussions, I think we had ideas about a couple different ideas, but I think one of them that we were just kicking around was just just having a deflag to say, across the board, I don't want early execution, and then to not get early execution unless you for sure opt into it. And that sounded kind of reasonable, just in terms of addressing the concerns that Benji raised on that discussion issue, so many moons ago. So I honestly, I thought that was the direction we were headed in, to have it off by default as a safety concern. But if it deserves more discussion, we can make it like a separate discussion, and I could throw up a PR eventually, just showing what I had in mind and describe, basically what I just described, and then we can talk about alternatives, later.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. To just have a global opt-in for it, and if we need more specific resolver by resolver functionality, I don't want to like go crazy building that until I feel like we should start with that and then see if there's a need for more advanced configurations. And yeah, I would like people to be using it and then get feedback on how, on like before we come up with a really elaborate configuration as part of the API.
Yeah,
I think
that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. I think effectively the early execution can be seen as a optimization to like reduce latency, but there are obviously the trade-offs that have been previously discussed. So defaulting to not enabling early execution, but making it so that you can just turn it on as a global setting makes a lot of sense to me. And then if you need a way of opting then back out of it on a per resolver basis, we could potentially do it with that little promise in the resolve info that we talked about before. So await the parent defer group or something like that you can just add into your resolver. And that will in a relatively straightforward way allow people to deal with that, I think.
Yeah, I think there should be some amount of information that goes into the GraphQL resolve info that gives you some idea of what's happening with regard to defer. I don't know exactly what that is, how much granularity we need there. Just having a promise that you could await seemed simple enough, but yeah, I think we should think carefully about that and see what info people want in there. But
I agree.
resolver would be a good start.
And I think the initial solution to that is just don't add anything and then add things when people need it, which is what you proposed before, Rob. So I fully agree with that.
There is in the info thing, there is one thing to mention, which is that the implementation right now, so as not to change the format of the info that is exposed to the resolver, hides what subfields are actually belong to a deferred payload, and just sends just sends everything to the resolver, so that a resolver that actually sends off like parses the info will lose. I'm not saying like this. The info argument is like not in the spec, right? But I'm just talking about my implementation, both before the this set of changes and in with this set of changes. So it's that probably needs attention, because that can it basically will lead to sort of a form of early execution. I think, if I'm understanding correctly, what will happen if someone parses that info argument to send to a downstream service. So that's just one thing to flag that we may have to change.
It's been a long time since I've worked with Resolve Info, because like I wrote a library to do it and then the library handles it for me. But I'm pretty sure that it basically just contains a copy of the AST that represents the query. So effectively, it doesn't break down what the child fields are. It actually just tells you what the selections are. So it will tell you fields and inline fragments and fragment references, fragment spreads, sorry. So I think that still actually contains, I think that still contains all the defer stuff. No, is that not right?
Oh, so it depends. It may depend how you look at it. Let's say you have a field that's above a defer. And so like one of your root fields, for example, and you have some child fields that are deferred and some that aren't. So then you're right. Then you're 100% right. Then the field nodes that are exposed to that root resolver will have all that information because it exposes the field nodes directly. But let's say you're in a resolver that so you're at a field that has both been deferred and not deferred, and you're now in the resolver of that. So in my what did we say, non-duplicating version, implementation, both what's on main now and what I'm proposing to proposing to merge, we actually execute that field only once, so there's no duplication. But we record that some of the one time that was from the deferred version, and it may have some subfields, and one time it was from the non-deferred version. And just to make there be no breaking changes as of yet, we don't yet communicate that to the resolver, so that we just drop that information. Basically, we go back from like a field details array just to the field nodes array. And so we drop those details as to which, I think in your version would have been in delivery group, let's say, that it belongs to. In my version, maybe it's called something else. I actually can't remember right now, or just which defer it belongs to, maybe in my version. But that's what's so basically sometimes yes and sometimes no. I think we're going to have to make a breaking change in that resolve info to take care of that for my implementation. For an implementation, I think that doesn't really ever do early execution, or that does it differently, you may not have to make a breaking change. I haven't. I'm not saying it's impossible to not making a breaking change. I'm just flagging that what we have on main and what I'm proposing to make doesn't really address that issue as of yet.
Okay, I think I understand roughly what you're saying. So it sounds like what you're saying at the moment is that when we're running it, because it's both deferred and non-deferred, so we're running it non-deferred, we don't tell it about the deferred field nodes. Is that effectively what you're saying?
Sort of. Worse or better, we tell it about the deferred field nodes and their subfields, but we don't tell them that they're deferred. We just include them.
Because they are just field selections, and the fact that they're deferred actually belongs to their parent fragment, and we don't pass that through. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we could pass it through. We have that information and we need that information.
Yes.
We're going to need it later, but we just don't yet. I mean, in the version that I have in the implementation, because that would require a breaking change, and we haven't decided, how to communicate it yet.
I've finally caught up with you. I finally understand. Yes, I think it's perfectly fine to. Yeah, okay. In the initial version of this, it's perfectly fine to not worry about containing that information and just to pass through the field nodes, all of them. Because effectively, we've said before, opting out of defer and stream is fine, right? Just returning the data and not doing anything defer and stream wise is reasonable. So the non-breaking way, say you asked for like ID, name, and bio, and for some reason bio was like, I don't know, generated by an LLM or something. It took a moment. It might be that that bit's meant to be deferred, but for a system that doesn't understand it, it's better for it to just get all three things and just execute them up front. And that would be fine. So long as we're still doing that, which it sounds like we are, that's fine. And then we do need to, in a future version, give them that additional information. But that, again, that is an optimization. That is like, I mean, the whole of Resolve Info is effectively an optimization, right? It's doing things that are outside of the spec. So yes, we should add information like that long term, but I wouldn't worry about it in the short term.
That is great to hear. Thank you. And then the one last thing I wanted to talk about, I mean, it sort of has to do, Benji, with the other meeting that you're running, the GraphQL.js currently running the GraphQL.js working group. I wanted to gather, I guess, Rob's thoughts and your thought as the temporary chair of that meeting as to, because I watched the video and I heard you mention that, and you know, some thoughts as to like what we should do over there at GraphQL.js. You know, in terms of how incremental delivery is currently now on main, and we haven't had a release in a while. So my goal is putting as a GraphQL.js contributor. I guess, generally speaking, even though most of my contributions have to do with incremental delivery, but I'm just saying, as a contributor, I think it would be great to get a release out as soon as possible, another release of GraphQL.js. And now putting back on my hat as somebody who's working on incremental delivery, I would love if that release had an experimental version of incremental delivery. You know, and I think getting it out there as soon as possible would be good for the GraphQL.js repo, and also good for incremental delivery to have people experimenting with the non-duplicating version of it. And so I think it would be like in our interests to get out a release as soon as possible. So I'm wondering, are we comfortable? Let's say this PR set is merged, and so we have something working with the new response format. Are we comfortable doing a release at that point? Not just an alpha, but like a release, and we still have all of this, the incremental delivery, under like an experimental flag. You have to use the special function of, you know, experimentally, I think it was something like experimentally execute incrementally or something like that. So is that the plan, generally speaking?
So from my point of view of this, and again, I'm not the maintainer of GraphQL.js. I'm just like acting as the chair of the meetings. But short of a maintainer of GraphQL.js, what I would propose at the moment is we do the minimally disruptive thing. So I think we should push out new versions of GraphQL 16 if we need to, that just address like production issues, like fix bugs, fix any security issues, you know, add maybe small new features, keep up to date with the actual spec changes, but don't do too much on the experimental front. GraphQL 17, I think, which is what's on main at the moment and is still in alpha or beta, that is effectively a test bed for stream and defer. That is really its whole purpose. The whole reason that 17 exists right now is as an incremental delivery test bed. So I think we should go ahead and merge stuff into there. And we can do alpha releases of that, but I don't think they will be official major releases. Because I honestly, I don't know what the rest of the state of version 17 is. So we'd need to analyze that.
I think there are some breaking changes that are not related to incremental delivery.
Yeah,
right? Was it
TypeScript and
like the
things, I think.
arguments? What was that? TypeScript, right? The TypeScript conversion. So, I mean, I could see
I
it
think
either way.
16 isn't 16's not on TypeScript. I think it is. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So I think 17 has some breaking TypeScript changes.
Ah, oh.
I know
Okay.
16 did as well, though.
Yeah. So then the idea. So basically, my hope would be to get out another alpha, at least modifying, I guess, what I said of with with the new implementation and working harder to, I think, get other servers and clients to support it, because I think there I'm not I think there originally was support for a defer and stream within some servers, but I don't think they picked up on the non-duplicating version that's in Alpha 3, and honestly I think there was even a yeah so I think it's would be beneficial to get out another alpha as soon as possible.
That is also
Not as
one
soon
of
as
the big,
Sorry, not as
that's
soon
one
as
of the,
possible. As soon as we're ready. Sorry.
sure. I think that's one of the other really big things that we need to keep in mind is there are people, I think Apollo even using stream defer or at least defer in the wild right now using the old version of it. So anything that we do that releases another major version or new versions may have impact on them. So we should definitely make sure that anyone who is doing that gets invited to this decision-making process as well. Um, I know Jeff from Apollo is more inclined in joining the GraphQL JS working group at the moment, so it would be good to reach out to him and say that these discussions are going on. But I suggest that we bring this discussion to the GraphQL JS working group to get the feedback from there. But yeah, I think continuing on the alpha path is the right way. Also, Yakov, one important thing to note is you do have the ability to push out a release of GraphQL using a canary build. So I think you do anyway. It might be that it needs to be like TSC or maintainer or something, but I think you can with GitHub action comments.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we've all
definitely.
been doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be enough to get a version out there that people can use for testing. We shouldn't need to release it as another alpha for that necessarily. And I would in fact encourage people to try that out and make sure that the canary works before we then merge it into the alpha.
Well, actually,
It,
the canary is from a PR, not
yeah.
once it's
Yes.
merged onto the main branch.
Yeah. So it would be good if we had I mean, I think we actually do have that. We have the version that's to main is actually published. Not so many people know that, but that's it would be nice to have a stable version of our latest changes. But if I remember correctly, we actually do have that, because what's on main is published under a separate tag. I have to research that, but I think that's we have a Deno version and a main version that's published also. So
All right, every commit to main also publishes a version.
I
That
think
sounds
so.
familiar.
I think so. So yeah, that may be all we need. Although, in case we screw up main, it would be I might yeah, it might be nice to have another alpha at some point. Just to have something saying this is this is a checkpoint that we're confident in.
All right, yeah, let's bring that up at the GraphQL JS meeting when we're ready for that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Just your, I'm pretty sure that I'm not 100% confident, but I'm pretty sure that when Apollo started using defer in production, they made it an opt-in that specifically mentioned it was something like defer spec 2022 or something like that. So like they were aware of that it was likely to change when they did that. So hopefully it doesn't cause too much issue for us.
Yeah, and we need to figure out from that as well, whether it's necessary for GraphQL.js to try and support like two different versions of incremental delivery. And honestly, I don't really think that that's tenable. It would just increase the bundle size quite a lot without benefiting most people. So I don't think we'll be able to do that. But it does mean, like, yes, you're right. I think they indicate it via a header that you're like opting in or something like that. I don't know whether that means that they would then need to branch and execute with this version of GraphQL versus that version of GraphQL in memory, or routing to different servers. I don't really know, but like they will need to figure out the solution to that. And it may well be that they need some assistance from us in doing so.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're the only people using like defer already as well. So really, if we hear of anyone else using it, we need to get them involved in these discussions, I think. I think what we found though, and I think this is really important, despite the various back and forth and the cycles of various spec edits, various rewrites of spec edits over and over again, the actual response format that we discussed like a year ago still seems to be standing up, right? We haven't found any major issues in that. So from the point of view of a client, people could implement like the current response format and basically their client should work. So in future, even if we keep iterating on the spec and keep iterating on actually the changes in GraphQL.js, the knock-on consequences for consumers shouldn't be too great, or possibly no knock-on consequences. Hopefully, only benefits.
Yeah, definitely. Assuming we don't change the response format again, which I won't rule out, but yeah.
Is there something? Is anyone aware of anything that would encourage us to change that? Like, is there weak points of it that haven't been addressed yet?
I don't have anything.
No, thankfully no. But I don't think anyone is using the new response format. So I mean, we have a great, hopefully better or great, almost said great, but adequate, hopefully tests on GraphQL.js, but I don't think anyone's using it in production.
There hasn't been an alpha published since we changed it. Is that true? Or was there?
I think Alpha 3 does include it, but I don't really think anyone's using that.
Okay.
Rob, if you want to organize with me offline, getting a new version out if it's ready to go. It sounds like you're actually more connected to this than I am, because like honestly, I literally just chair these meetings and that's it. So yeah, please let's chat about that and see how we can make it happen.
All right, we'll do.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'll take a look at the spec edits that I wrote and see if I can understand them again and apply them to the test case that Yakov raised. I think, Yakov, what you're primarily asking is, how does my solution deal with that problem, right?
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, to be honest, one of the things that I didn't 100% get to completely understand the graph portion of it, which sounded really interesting, which I would love to use in the implementation, or in my version of the spec edits. But even as a start, I thought, okay, well, how does it handle in the test that test case? Is it within that portion or a different portion? So it just helped me understand it better. I would love to understand it more, the graph portion better also. But I'll start with that one test case, I guess, and then yeah, just like a line or two, or like how you think it handles it, or a direction, and if you get a chance.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll do what I can. I think that's maybe it from us.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you in a month. or sooner than then, maybe at a GraphQL JS meeting. All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.